it was a it was it was a life and death changing moment for me. I had a severe asthma attack that started, Gary, when I took our little family dog to the groomers. So I was in this groomers and started to have shortness of breath and started to wheeze and realized I needed to quickly get out of there and grab a rescue inhaler that I had in my car. And so I drove home roughly about a mile's distance. Gary, I just cried out, "Jesus, help me, Jesus." And within a very short amount of time, Gary, I blacked out. And after I blacked out there in my family room, over the next moments, I had my life pass before me and all of these scenes from my life. And I had the thought, I'm going to die and there's nothing I can do about it. Then I was in the ER. That's when I coded in the ER and they resuscitated me. The only way I can describe it is that I felt my spirit leave my body at the moment when I died.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Best You interview series. It's Gary here again. Thank you very, very much, as always, for taking the time to join me. And today I'm delighted to be joined by author, international speaker, leadership coach and trainer, Bill Goodwin, who is here to discuss his pillars to priority living. Bill has over 30 years of leadership experience in growing and building individuals and teams with proven leadership training and dynamic speaking for growth. Bill is a Maxwell Leadership Executive Team member with his mentor John C. Maxwell and a member of the National Speakers Association. A former lead pastor, after serving for over a decade as a youth pastor, John founded Priority Living Consulting Group to add value and equip leaders to reach their full potential. He's also the author of Priority Living, 7 Pillars to Make Your Life Count, which we'll definitely get a chance to chat about today. Now, here is the interesting part. Not that the rest of that was not interesting, but on November the 23rd, 1999, Bill experienced respiratory failure and died. Being given a second chance has changed his life, and he often encourages individuals and audiences alike sharing the full story of his afterlife experience. And just as a wee side note, when Bill introduced himself to me, that was essentially the title of the email that says, Bill Goodwin died. And I can't remember what the rest of the title was. And I thought, wow, because sometimes emails come in and I'm thinking, I don't think I'm going to read that one, or that looks like spam or anything. And I opened it right away. I thought, this has to be good. This has to be something worth listening to. And I'm very delighted to tell you that it absolutely will be. Known for his ability to cut through complexity, Bill combines futuristic thinking with a relentless drive to start fast and finish strong. Bill shows up with integrity, clarity, and a whole lot of momentum. Bill, thank you very, very much for joining me today.
Gary, it is an honor to be with you, and I'm so looking forward to the conversation we're about to have. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely fabulous. So let's start with your life-changing experience that did become the catalyst for your journey. Since then, we did have a chance to chat with about this prior to recording. Tell the viewers and listeners how it all went down.
Yeah, how it all went down. I think potentially that email that you received had a subject line, "Learn to live from a dude who died," and that's one of the, at least one of the emails that I send out often. But yeah, November 23rd, 1999. We're coming up on 26 years, depending upon when you're listening to this, and it was a life and death changing moment for me. I had a severe asthma attack that started, Gary, when I took our little family dog to the groomers to get all cleaned up. And I didn't normally do that. I did grow up with some allergies and asthma like symptoms. And so our little dog was, allergenic free or whatever. And so I was in this groomers and started to have shortness of breath and started to wheeze and realized I needed to quickly get out of there and grab a rescue inhaler that I had in my car. And I wasn't getting relief, and I started to panic, and I wasn't quite sure what to do. Obviously, we need to breathe to live, and so I drove home roughly about a mile's distance. And when I got home, went through my garage door into my home, and I cried out a desperate prayer, something that with the little air that I had left, Gary, I just cried out, "Jesus, help me, Jesus!" And was quite panicky and quite scared. And I grabbed a nebulizer machine, which I could put some solution in it, and began to breathe that, thinking I would get the relief I needed, because I hadn't gotten that relief yet. And it was all happened so quickly, and yet everything seemed like it was in slow motion. And I called out to my daughter, who was home from a break from school, watching TV, and my wife actually had gone out to run an errand that morning, and so I had my daughter call 911, and in a short time, the paramedics arrived, and they began to give me some treatment, and within a very short amount of time, Gary, I blacked out. And after I blacked out there in my family room, over the next moments, I had my life pass before me, and all of these scenes from my life. And I had the thought, I'm going to die, and there's nothing I can do about it. Now, I wasn't conscious then, that was in my subconscious. And as I had the thought, well, first of all, I was taken by ambulance to the hospital, which I do not remember that. I was unconscious. Then I was in the ER. That's when I coded in the ER, and they resuscitated me, or I've been given this second chance at life. And but I had the thought, I'm going to die, and there's nothing I can do about it. And at that moment, the only way I can describe it is that I felt my spirit leave my body at the moment when I died. And in the book, I share extensively the heaven encounter, that afterlife experience I had. And it gives a lot of hope for people, because we often wonder what happens when we die, and I at least can share my experience. And then I was resuscitated, and I woke up out of a medical induced coma. I'd been intubated, and I was on 100% life support for a period of hours. But I woke up in intensive care in the ER, and many people that had heard about my situation that were praying for me, and so grateful for that. And and now here I am, all these years later, sharing my story. I've been actually sharing it over these years, but I formulated it into this book that you mentioned, called Priority Living: 7 Pillars to Make Your Life Count. And so that's a bit of the backstory. And I want to make my life count. I know that you don't have to die to want to make your life count, but it was all the more, prevalent for me. Like, okay, I've been given a second chance. How am I going to make a difference in my time that I have left?
Yeah, so such a powerful, incredible story. And when you get resuscitated, and you're starting to appreciate, know, understand what happened to you during that time, certainly from a physical sense,
Mhm.
from a health perspective, how soon afterwards did you have the recollection of the experiences, the spiritual experiences that you had at that particular moment?
Yeah, great question. It was instantaneous. So
Right.
the medical team did an amazing job of obviously resuscitating me and caring for me, getting me intubated, and
Mm.
then getting me on this life support, getting me transferred up to the intensive care unit and caring for me. But when I came out of that medical induced coma, and my eyes opened, and I had a tube down my throat, of course, my wife was standing next to my bed, and I couldn't talk because of the tube. But they gave me a clipboard, and I wrote on the clipboard. I still have the paper. Uh, it's just amazing what I scribbled. But the first thing I scribbled was, I saw Jesus. And because I had this heaven encounter. And then it's kind of humorous, because and I had tears streaming down my face as I wrote that. And then I wrote something quite funny or humorous. The next thing I wrote was, "Take this tube out of my mouth. I'm fine. I want to go home." And is that something? So to answer your question, I knew it instantaneously,
Yeah.
and I couldn't wait to tell people, "You won't believe what I just experienced." It makes me think of the great quote, and I probably will get the person who said it wrong, uh, who said, we really we aren't human beings having a spiritual experience. we are spirit beings having a human experience. And that's definitely what I experienced on that day.
Yeah, I've heard that quote before, and like you, I can't remember 100% who said that, but it's so profound. And in terms of your spiritual journey prior to the incident, is that when you were a pastor? You had belief at the time, and you that helped compound your experience, or did that come after the event?
Sure. Yeah, I actually was a person of faith. I had come to my Christian faith when I was a teenager, having grown up in a family of parents and grandparents and so on that were people of faith. But my personal faith really came alive when I was a teenager. And then at the time when this happened, I actually was serving at a very large church as a youth pastor at the time.
Right.
When this happened in 1999, I was 28. I was serving as a youth pastor. And then years later, we moved from Arizona, where this happened, to Minnesota, where I currently live. And at that time, I became a senior or a lead pastor of a church, and kind of in a different role. But he definitely was already a person of faith. This wasn't something that obviously it transformed my life in a profound way to know
Mm.
that the scripture says that when we are absent from the body, we are present with the Lord, and I fully experienced that. So so it really, your faith becomes sight. And so I love sharing the story. I'm so glad that I, all these years later, was able to write it in a book so that people can read the full story and
Yeah.
hear what I and see what I saw, because I want to give hope. And I want to give hope that, we don't just breathe our last and it's emptiness. There
Mm.
is an afterlife, and the essence of who I am and you are and we are, it's not our physical state, it's our spirit or our soul that does live on into a place called eternity.
Yeah. So you've taken this experience. You're in a lead role within your church or community, and then that transfers itself into eventually into saying, there is something else I need to be able to give to the world right now, and I'm going to organize and manifest that through trainings and speaking and mentorship and such. How do you take those experiences, and not just the event in
Mhm.
1999, but your whole entire experiences? How does that manifest itself into the type and style of training and experience that you try to give people through that work?
Yeah, that's definitely what I'm passionate about, is really fulfilling my purpose of adding value to others and equipping leaders. Everything rises and falls on leadership, and so if I can be a conduit of equipping leaders, existing leaders, as well as raising up and developing new leaders in a positive way, that's definitely something that I want to use my life experience, because Gary, I believe that your now leads to your next. And so
Mm.
all of those years as a youth pastor, I was I was gaining leadership skills and abilities and experience, and then I became a lead pastor, and in different ways I was raising up, developing business people, developing other ministry leaders, and so your now leads to your next, which has led me to where I'm at now over these last almost 5 years, specifically under the leadership of John Maxwell and other great leaders, of being able to develop leaders in a new kind of way, and both in the marketplace as well as in ministry. And I love what I get to do. It's absolutely the greatest joy. And so I would say, not to make it about me, but to say to our friend that's listening right now, Gary, that whatever you're doing now, do it with all your heart, and recognize that it might not be ultimately where you want to end up, but it is a stepping stone to get to where you're ultimately going. Because not only for me, but for you, your now will lead to your next.
I love that sentiment. Your now leads to your next. It can be conceptualized through any person, through any industry, through any part of the world, through any generation or demographic.
Yes.
I love that. So you mentioned John C. Maxwell. I mentioned him very briefly in the intro bio too. Tell me how all that came about.
Yeah, isn't that great? I'd love to share this story as well. In 2018, a friend of mine got an invitation to bring a guest because he was invited to spend the day with John Maxwell. And so I first was asked if I wanted to attend with him, and I said, no, I'd love to go, but I have a dentist appointment that day. I don't think I can make it. No, I'm just kidding. I would have never said that. I would have canceled anything on my calendar.
Yeah.
Because like so many of us, I had read many of John's books over the years. I used to watch Minute with Maxwell online, and so many different ways that I had heard him at conferences or whatever. So I said yes to that opportunity and went down to Atlanta, Georgia, and had this incredible day. 30, 40 people probably in the room that day. In many, if not all, had opportunities to have some one-on-one interaction with John during breaks or during lunch, and just absolutely felt like I was in just a dream, a little bit of a dream. And my friend that I connected with there said, you really should look at the possibility of, at the time it was called the John Maxwell Team, which was for coaches and for speaking. And I was pastoring my church and very, very much entrenched in what was happening there. It wasn't quite the right time to even look into something else. And but after the pandemic, I did look at what would it take to be a part of the John Maxwell Team, and I joined in March of 2021. And since that time, they've rebranded it. Now it's called Maxwell Leadership Certified Team, and I have thoroughly enjoyed it. I like to say, Gary, I found my tribe of people. The most dynamic, growth-minded, many of them are people of faith, not all, but really incredible people. I don't know the exact number, probably 58,000 coaches worldwide. The goal is to have 100,000 coaches. So if you are listening and you're like, what is this Maxwell leadership? Could I be a part of it? Reach out to me. I'll love to connect you with kind of a next step to kind of explore the possibility of being another one of the wonderful Maxwell Leadership Certified Team members. But so then when I joined Maxwell Leadership, I realized I need a business vehicle. So I started an LLC in order to do things outside of my church, in business and coaching and speaking, which the leadership of my church, by the way, was wonderful. They were very supportive of that, knowing how passionate I was about leadership. And so began to do that. And my company is called Priority Living Consulting Group. And when it came down to about a year and a half in, I was no longer having a side hustle. I had two full-time jobs, and I just went to the leadership of our church, and we really considered how I could make a positive exit, and it was the time to do that. And so we set a date and moved towards that, and so now for over 3 years, although I've been, like you said in the intro, over 30 years equipping leaders. Over the last 3+ years, I've been full-time Priority Living Consulting Group, and in that I get to work with other ministries as well. So I have a ministry called International Ministerial Fellowship that I do leadership development and kind of care for ministry leaders, as well as the business leaders that I care for through Priority Living, and it's a great combination there for this season of life for me.
Incredible, absolutely incredible. What would you say the biggest impact John C. Maxwell has had on your life, on your journey thus far?
Yeah, he's well, those in the team, we affectionately call him Papa John. And because he is like a papa to us, he just really is a great listener. We know him as a communicator, but if you get close to John, you'll realize real quick he's a really good listener, and loves to listen. And so that's one thing that's impacted my life, is to speak less and listen more, because
Yeah.
we are able to get greater context when it comes to working with a business, for example. When I listen more and I ask more questions, I may already have some things in my toolbox over here that I want to share with them to help them. But the more that I step back and I ask questions and I slow down and I listen, I might realize that no, not this tool. This tool would be better than that tool. And I've learned, watching and being with at the times with John Maxwell, of what a great listener that he is. He even wrote a book called Good leaders ask great questions, and it's something that he lives and he models that. So people do what people see. So that's one of the things I've gained from him. I think another phrase, and he said this many, many times. I've quoted it many times. By the way, John Maxwell is very generous, so he doesn't always need you to quote him or give him credit. He says it this way. I find it humorous. He says, the first time you quote me, say John Maxwell says. The second time you quote me, go ahead and say I've heard it said. And the third time and beyond, say I always say. So I really like that. He's very generous that way. But a comment or a statement that John, I've heard him say many times, which has helped me, and I've helped others with it, is this phrase that everything worthwhile is uphill. Just think about that, Gary. Everything in your life that's worthwhile is uphill. He goes on to say it's uphill all the way. So with that comes, we often have uphill hopes and downhill daily habits. So we can accomplish almost just about anything if we realize, first of all, this is going to be an uphill climb. It's not going to be easy. If it were easy, everybody would be doing it. So it's an uphill climb. And then you want to climb with others. So you get mentors in your life who have done the climb, and they begin to coach you and mentor you along the way. That's why I love coaching and mentoring others to help them in their climb. And then you realize that it's about your daily habits. So leaders are made daily, not in a day. That's a John quote. And so it's what are you doing daily to develop yourself in personal development and growth that will get you up that hill, whatever it is that you're climbing. And then you no longer have just uphill hopes and downhill daily habits. You have uphill daily habits that'll get you from where you are to where you want to be.
Yeah, I just love that. Both things that are within our control, our ability to listen and our ability to be cognizant of the journey that we are planning, and how our attitude, our effort, our endeavours, our habits are going to play a key role in that. And a lot of times people don't realise they have more control than they think they do. They think there are so many external barriers to what it is they would like to try and achieve or accomplish or gain. And when you start to actually do the work, when you start to have these daily actions, daily habits that are all really compounding into your ability to be able to serve, deliver, grow, add value, it becomes more empowering. Because you start to realize, yes, there are skills, there are education, there are supports that are required, but a lot of it comes from within.
Yes, it sure does. And, I'm definitely can attest to this in my own life where, there's times I thought things would be easier, times I thought things would cost less money, times I thought that they would be done quicker. But when I've come now to accept what Papa John says, that everything worthwhile is uphill all the way, it changes my framework. It changes my endurance, my perseverance. And I can then accept the fact that truly consistency compounds. And it's one thing to start. It's another thing to be consistent. So whether that's with your finances or with your leadership or with your relationships or with your health, it's one thing to go work out one day. You don't really gain that much except for some soreness. But it's the consistency of continually working out over time that we end up seeing progress be made, and that's all part of that uphill climb.
It truly is. It truly is. My first genuine recollection of John Maxwell was I got the book, the 21 or 25 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. Forgive me.
Yes.
I've got one of the numbers is correct. I'm
21.
Sure,
you got it. Yep.
21. And then what my typical process is with a hard copy book on leadership or on any self-development, self-education topic is to highlight the things that are meaningful for me in the time. And it took me a long time to get to the highlighting stage. I don't mind admitting, Bill, because I always like to keep my stuff good. I like to keep it neat, tidy. If someone wants to borrow it, they get a pristine copy and such. But I thought over time, there's so much gold in these publications that I really should start to you know, highlight what it means for me just now, and then revisit that again in the future, and you know, recollect why I thought that was an important thing. The challenge I had with that particular book is that, and this is literally no joke, I was highlighting almost every single line in the book. I was, you know, and I'm looking for the genuine highlights to say I will remember what
Yes.
it meant. That's a key lesson. I'm thinking I'll have, you know, 5 or 6 of the 21 that will be meaningful. And I got about I got about a quarter of the
That's
way
so
through the
great.
book, and I thought I'm running out of ink here. I'm going to have to just stop. I get the gist. I understand. I'm hooked. You have me in a brilliant read. A brilliant read, very, very well written. And I imagine, I have no idea how he does this. I imagine that any single person that reads that has any affiliation for or desire to understand leadership a wee bit more, it will just speak to them where they're at in that journey. And it was fascinating. I was, you know, I did
Mhm.
I did get a tiny bit frustrated because I'm thinking, am I getting slower? Am I absorbing this differently? This is not my usual process. And then I thought, no, I'm just having an experience here, you know. And it's
Mhm.
been incredible. And I've followed a lot of John's stuff since. So since we're talking about books, tell me about your book. Congratulations on the book,
Thank you.
and I know that it was quite the journey to firstly realize that you were supposed to write a book, and then secondly to write the
Mhm.
book, and the subsequent experiences you've had.
Yeah, I love to talk about it. Let me just make one other comment about John Maxwell books. You know, he's written almost 100 books. I think it's 94 or something like that books. And then there's iterations of his books that have kind of been repackaged, so over 100. And that's just remarkable to me. But that particular book that you mentioned, the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, a few years ago celebrated his 25th anniversary of that book. It was revised version put out, and I remember the numbers that John gave. He said that book has sold. They've sold more copies of that leadership book than any leadership book that's ever been sold in the history of the world.
Wow.
That's a prized book right there. And he sold 34 million copies of that book, and he personally trained leaders in 195 countries on content from that book. I think it's 5-6 million leaders were in
Yeah.
audiences with John as he actually taught from that book over a period of the 25 years since he wrote that book. So absolutely, that's a classic. You know, you can put that up there with, you know, Stephen Covey or Good to Great, you know, different great books, or Think and Grow Rich. You can put the
Yeah.
21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership in the category of classics when it comes to leadership. So so my book, which I'm just getting started. I haven't written 100 books yet. I've written one, and I'm excited about that. I'm excited about that. But hopefully,
Start
Lord,
somewhere.
you gotta start somewhere, and so here we are. So I'll just hold it up here for those that are watching. It's Priority Living, 7 pillars to make your life count. And interesting enough, I have the CEO of Maxwell Leadership. His name is Mark Cole. He's been the right-hand guy traveling with John Maxwell for 25 years, and has been a mentor to me as well. And Mark graciously wrote the foreword to my book as well. So I'm grateful for that, and that I could partner with Maxwell Publishing to be a way to get this book done. But so my book really is this backstory that we started with in 1999 when I had this respiratory failure and died, and then since that time, you know, I didn't set out to write a book. I didn't set out to come up with this priority living or this framework or these 7 pillars. I just wanted to make my life count. So I began to think about, you know, what are the ways I can be intentional to make my life count? And little by little, things would fall into place, like things like relationships or having fun in life, not just letting your life be work, but let it be fun, and exploring this planet, and purpose and personal growth, and, you know, all these things. So in more recent years, it has all come together, Gary, to be a framework that I call priority living. And these 7 pillars built on a foundation are really all about how I'm intentional to make my life count. I'm always quick to say this is a self-help book. It's not a shelf-help book. We get many books that we put on the shelf we never read. This is
Yeah.
one that you actually have to read it in order to get the benefits of it. But I also would say that This isn't like 7 steps to get successful or 7 steps to become, wealthy. This is really a framework to you continually live on and on and on. It's about being intentional
Well,
about these 7 pillars as areas or lanes in my life that I'm mindful of so that I live a fulfilling life. Hopefully, I'm adding value to others in the journey. It's not just about me. And that when I get to the end of my life again, whenever that comes about, that I can look back on my life and say, I was intentional to make my life count. So that's really the backstory or the overview of it. And if you want me to share what these 7 pillars are, I'm happy to do that as well.
yes, please. Yes, please.
Yeah. So you start with purpose. We always start with purpose. What's your purpose? And so the first pillar, the first 7 chapters, each of those chapters are a different pillar, by the way. And the first chapter and the first pillar is purpose, because we start with purpose. And I have 10 questions in that chapter that help the reader begin to unpack and think about their own purpose. I love the quote from Mark Twain when he said, "The 2 greatest days in your life are the day you were born and the day you discover why." Wow, is that
Yeah.
powerful? You,
Yeah.
friend, were born with a purpose. Are you fully living your purpose? Well, I help you unpack that with that first chapter on purpose. Then we move to personal growth, or we move to the pillar is growth. And that started for me when I was a teenager. My Uncle Tom and Aunt Carolyn, who were entrepreneurs, small business owners in Cincinnati, Ohio, would come out to Arizona where I was growing up, and their family would visit, our extended family. And my Uncle Tom saw potential in me. And I just want to ask you today, who do you see potential in that you can invest in, that you can encourage, that you can, help develop them? My Uncle Tom was instrumental in my life because he saw potential in me as a
Mm.
teenager trying to find my way, and began, and this goes back to the 1980s, and he gave me these cassette tapes, if you remember those, of
Yes,
Zig Ziglar. Gave me books. I have them on my shelf behind me here. "See You at the Top" by Zig Ziglar, Og Mandino books, The Greatest Salesman in the World. All
yeah.
these books back then that were really helping to develop me to have an appetite for personal development. And I'm so grateful for that. He really invested in me. And so the second pillar is growth. And so I really talk about how are you growing yourself. Be better than yesterday. Every day we're to be better than the day before. Then we get into the next pillar, the next chapter, which is impact. Once you
Mm.
discover your purpose, then you're growing yourself. Now you can make an impact in this world. I say this phrase in that chapter is, do small things, make big waves. And so making an impact doesn't necessarily mean changing the world. It means changing your world. It means doing the things that are maybe seem rather small, but they're making big waves. And so we unpack that in that next chapter, that next pillar, which moves us to the fourth pillar, which is the pillar of rhythm. And rhythm is so important in our life. Gary, I see many people going nowhere fast. They're just
Yeah.
going through day by day by day by day. You know that the culmination of your days becomes the culmination of your life. So how you're living your days, are you okay with the way your life is being unfolded before you? So with impact, or excuse me, with rhythm, I say we want to build a life, not just a schedule. Build a life,
Yes.
not just a schedule. And so I really talk about how you gain rhythm in your life. And it's really the picture of a semicircle. It's like a pendulum. And that there's a quote from a gentleman named Mike Breen, that we are to work from rest, not rest from work. And I talk about the nuance of that in our life. Rhythm is just super important. I like to add that in that chapter, I share my personal story of complete burnout when I hit a wall, and in 2010, 2011, and had to come back from this time in my life that was just unprecedented because I had completely burned out and I needed to learn how to have rhythm in my life. That
Right.
leads us to the next pillar, which is the pillar of explore. Explore is chase wonder, adventure often, explore big. We've been given this beautiful earth that we can explore the beauty of nature, We can explore the beauty of cultures and different people groups, and then with that, enjoy every day. Find something every day that you are intentional to have fun with. I'm a person, I like to laugh. I like to cause joy and laughter, and so I share some of my stories in that chapter that are all about exploring and really enjoying life. The next chapter, or the next pillar, is the pillar of connect. And I say that connections fuel the soul. So relationships are so important, whether they're personal or professional relationships. I really do believe in the quote from Maya Angelou that says, the quality of your life will be determined by the quality of your relationships. And so in that chapter, I have a pyramid of relationships, of how you go from being complete strangers to going up the pyramid of greater connectivity with people in your life, and love to share about that. And then finally, the seventh pillar is give. The more you give, the more you grow. And so giving is all about generosity, living a life of generosity. And I've shared some stories in there that kind of blow your mind, of generosity. And I think that's a big part of what our life should be about. It's not just about ourselves. It's how we lift others up. It's how we are generous with our time, with our talents, with our treasure. And so those are the seven pillars, and those are things that I'm intentional about in my life, and continue to grow in how I live these out. But this is not theory. I've been living in this space, for 20 plus years, and I felt like it was time to share this with the world. And one of those ways is obviously through the book, but the book has led me to you and these podcasts that are able to share this message, to encourage others to make their life count. And then I know I've gone kind of long here, but let me just add, there's 3 additional chapters. There's a chapter on priorities, because this is all about priority living. And there's an exercise in that chapter that you can identify what are your priorities. And then I talk about foundation, that these pillars have to be built upon something. So what is your foundation? And then finally, there's a chapter on leaving a legacy. And in there, I talk about how inheritance is what you leave to someone, but legacy is what you leave in someone. And so that's the 10 chapters of the book called Priority Living.
I love it. Initially in preparation for today's interview, Bill, I was thinking I want to focus, once you explain what the 7 are, we'll focus on one of them. I think we need to do this again, because I'd like to focus on all 7. Because at the time I'm thinking, right, I'm going to focus on that one too. I'm going to focus on that one too. Then this is going to be a 3-hour long podcast. So
right. Well, maybe I'll have to come back. We'll see.
Yeah. The one thing that's resonating with me overall is actually probably 2 things. One would be the connectivity, the relationships, the ability. I see a lot of, actually, to use the word connectivity, between a lot of the topics, to say you will be able to give this if you are more connected, if you explore more, if you stay in the same position and don't gain new experiences, and your ability to give your own experiences to these experiences. There's a lot being left on the table in terms of your growth and other people's growth. But the one main one I was going to go back to was on the rhythm. And you'd mentioned that like some of these gains will not be monumental gains, that one day it was this way, the next day it was that way. You mentioned it briefly earlier with the gym analogy too. But that ability to know what's right for you, to know what you need to do to start, to continue, to be consistent, and to experience these gains as they come to you, knowing that these, if I could say micro gains, that's my word, not yours, but the micro gains, to be able to have them compound upon each other, to give yourself that best opportunity to say, unless you're having a medical event like you experienced, or there's a lottery event or some sort of health thing, there's very few things that are going to absolutely happen overnight. And creating that rhythm to give yourself the best opportunity really resonated.
Yes. I think that is a key piece. I love that you shared that, because it's a process. Our life is a process. And so some key words for me in this is, being intentional. Where are we being intentional? Obviously, the word priority is important to me. And then the aspect that, you know, go back to the quote from John Maxwell earlier, everything worthwhile is uphill. So
Yeah.
these different areas in my life, I recognize that it's uphill to live a life of rhythm. It's
Yeah.
uphill to live a life of personal development and growth. It's uphill to be a person who's generous. These are uphill qualities, but at the end of the day, I find it to be the most rewarding and the most fulfilling way to live my life. And again, that's why I'm here to share it with others.
Absolutely fabulous. And what would you say would be your biggest learning or experience or growth moment through
Mhm.
writing this book?
Well, that's a great thing for me to think about. I think, um, I, just like other areas of my life, I ended up hiring. So I'm self-published. I'm not with a publisher. I'm self-published. But with that, I ended up getting a 8-time best-selling author as a coach to coach me.
Yeah,
And when I say that, it sounds extensive. And he was very, very influential. I think we talked 6 or 8 times over the course of a little more than a year, but
yeah,
he was able to guide me and help me in actually how to structure a book and how to find an editor. The different nuances of it really was helpful. So definitely writing a book for me was a growing and stretching me
yeah,
process. And now, by the way, I'm partway through my next book that'll come out some point down the road. But I'm so focused on sharing this message right now that I'm not in a rush. But
yeah,
I'm inspired to keep writing because there's a healthy uh, discipline for me in doing that. And once I got the outline kind of laid out where it made sense, the 7 chapters are the 7 pillars, and then
mm,
once I got it kind of laid out, and I knew what stories or principles or quotes I was going to put in the chapters, then I would just schedule my time. It wasn't even like it was, sometimes you hear of writer's block. I didn't really have writer's block once because I had it
yeah,
laid out where I could just, okay, I'm going to do 500 words this morning. I'm going to do 1,000 words this Saturday, whatever. And so I
yeah,
would sit down and I'd look at the outline and I just begin to flesh out what I had already put there.
yeah,
And that was because my coach taught me that. He said, "This is how you write a book.
yeah,
Don't sit down and go, 'What should I write today?'" He's like, "No, you already know what you're going to write. You just got to make the time with
yeah,
yourself to write it." And so that made it so much easier. And for anybody that is looking to write a book, that those nuggets were super helpful and valuable to me of ways to construct a book. And then the other thing I'll give you real quick was he said do not edit while you're writing. And
yeah,
now I'd already probably been 3 chapters in, not necessarily the first 3 chapters, but I'd already written 3 chapters, and I was editing to the best of my ability
yeah,
as I went. And he encouraged me. He said, "No, that's a different process. Get your thoughts out.
yeah,
When you get an editor, they'll look at does the content fit where you have it, or are there things you need to expound upon, or are there things that don't fit? You take it out."
yeah,
Um, and so the book, just like probably any book, it's a very different book in its final form than me getting it out. And because the editor, she was absolutely incredible of helping me, take this lump of clay that I had tried to put some form to, and she really helped shape it to give it, what it has become.
What a tremendous journey. It sounds, I can even feel the energy, as you
Mm,
explain that, just in terms of the growth, in terms of the excitement, in terms of the learnings, in terms of the expansive opportunities that will come from you having that process, experiencing it, and then the subsequent experiences that you have on top of that too. That's amazing.
absolutely.
So, Bill, as you know,
Mhm.
this is called the Best You podcast, and I take this opportunity with every guest to ask them what's one regular practice that Bill employs to give him the best opportunity to be the best version of himself each and every day.
Thank you for that question. I'm glad that you asked that of your guests, and that I didn't have to even, stumble on a thought for that right away. It's what I learned back in 2010, 2011 is more 2011 because I was coming through this burnout time and I began to realize how valuable, for me at least, early mornings are. And I
Right.
love the quiet of the early morning. I love getting up, having my cup of coffee while I enjoy reading, writing, and just having time to even just think. Sometimes I'm not reading, sometimes I'm not writing. I'm just sitting there with my thoughts and
Mm.
beginning to think through things. As a person of faith, I use that time as well to pray about my day. I prayed for you this morning, Gary, because I looked at my calendar and said, who's on my calendar, what's on my calendar, and just asking for the Lord to be in the midst of my interactions, both planned and unplanned. And so that for me is how I refresh and refill myself. I know that we can't give away what we don't have. So if
Yeah.
I'm living on borrowed refreshment, then I don't have much refreshment to give others. So
Yeah.
I'm intentional about that. When we fly on an airplane, they always say, if the mask were to come down for oxygen, put it over your nose and mouth before helping others.
Yeah.
And I think too often for my life prior to that, I was trying to put the mask on somebody else while I was suffocating. And
Yeah.
that's not a good way to live. It's not a good way to lead. So I'm intentional about my mornings. I'm intentional to slow down and get myself in a place where I'm centered and reading personal development books when I'm writing, I'm thinking, so that when I move on with my day, the things that are on my day, I for the most part am coming at it in a refreshed and a clear-headed and a refreshed state. So that's what I do to be the best me, and it works. It's tended to work since 2011. So just continue with that.
And that leads itself into the intention that you spoke about earlier. You get that opportunity to, as you say, lead into the day with more clarity, awareness, intention, I should say. And, and that ability to be able to deliver as much as you possibly can when you possibly can too. I love it. Absolutely love it, Bill. Before I let you go, where can people find out more about you and more about the book?
Yeah, thank you for asking. You can, first of all, I'd love for you to come and download a free chapter of the book. It's available. I'll give you two URLs. It'll take you to the same place. You
Yeah.
can go to PriorityLivingBook.com, which will take you to my business page, which is PriorityLivingCG.com. That stands for Priority Living Consulting Group. So I'll
Yeah.
give it again. It's PriorityLivingCG.com. You'll see on the homepage as well as the book page. The book page has endorsements from others about the book, and
Yeah.
then but both the homepage and the book page give you an opportunity to download a free chapter of the book. I encourage you to do that, and then it's available on Amazon. You can get the book through my website. It'll link you there, but otherwise, just go to Amazon, put in Priority Living, Bill Goodwin. You can get an ebook, you can get a paperback or a hardcover of the book there, and that's where the book's available. As far as reaching out to me, I am open for speaking engagements. If I could add value to your audience, I'm a coach, so if I could connect with you on some type of leadership coaching, I would love to connect with you about that. And you can reach me through my website. You can find me on LinkedIn and Facebook just under my name, Bill Goodwin, Goodwin. And I'm also on Instagram. For those that are there, you can find me at Coach Bill Speaks. And I look forward, Gary, to connecting with some of your audience on a personal level, and however I can add value and equip leaders. And I'm here to do just that.
Amazing. Well, thank you very, very much for coming on the show today. I've learned a lot and absolutely, absolutely loved the conversation. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you again for having me.